Now turn to Section 1.
Section 1. You will hear a woman called Tanya talking to her friend called Simon, who lives abroad. Tanya is planning to visit Simon. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. You will see that there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello?
Hi, is that Tanya?
Yes, Simon. Lovely to hear you. How are you?
Very well, and we're so looking forward to seeing you.
So am I.
Now, I don't have a lot of time, I'm afraid, so I wanted to make sure we've got all your details. Have you confirmed your flights?
Yes, I'm definitely coming on the 22nd of June.
Excellent. Have you got your flight number?
Not with me, I'm afraid, but I promise I'll email it.
Tanya promises to send her flight number. So, flight number has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello?
Hi, is that Tanya?
Yes, Simon. Lovely to hear you. How are you?
Very well, and we're so looking forward to seeing you.
So am I.
Now, I don't have a lot of time, I'm afraid, so I wanted to make sure we've got all your details. Have you confirmed your flights?
Yes, I'm definitely coming on the 22nd of June.
Excellent. Have you got your flight number?
Not with me, I'm afraid, but I promise I'll email it. Let me make a note of all this.
Yes, do, because one of us will try to come and collect you from the airport if we can. I presume you'll be coming into Terminal 1?
I don't know. I'll have to find out which one it is.
Yes, you must. We don't want to be waiting at the wrong one.
But hang on. I'll be arriving at about lunchtime, and that'll mean you have to take time off work to pick me up. You really mustn't do that.
Look, we're not all that busy at work, and if there's a problem, I can text you when you arrive, and you can take a taxi.
Okay.
There's a really good company called Pantera.
Can you spell that?
It's Pantera. They have a stand at the airport. You can't miss it, and they're really reliable.
Great, thanks. How far are you from the airport?
About 40 minutes.
And you're near the city centre, aren't you?
We're east of it, actually. Don't tell the driver city centre, because you'll really get caught up in traffic.
Okay, and I'll make sure I carry your address with me. Now, have you got my mobile, cell phone number?
Yes, you sent it last month.
But I tell you what, I don't think I've got yours. I'd better have it now, just in case.
Okay, and I changed it recently anyway. Ready? It's 07765 328 411.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Thanks. Now, what should I pack?
Well, all the usual, casual clothes mainly. Though you'd better bring an evening dress. We'll be having at least one fancy dinner in a hotel restaurant. Okay, now, when you're coming, unfortunately the weather is not going to be brilliant.
I know, it's the rainy season. I'm bringing an umbrella.
We have tons of those, so don't pack one. But pack a raincoat, a good one, 'cause we'll try and get out for plenty of hikes.
Okay, sure. Sounds super. Just what I love. And I'd better remember to pack my sturdy walking shoes.
Excellent idea. It's pretty rugged round here, so they have to be tough.
I can imagine. I'm so looking forward to getting out. Oh, Simon, before I forget, you recommended I read a book about your area.
Yeah.
What was the name again? I'd like to read it, to get an idea of the history, etc.
It's called Mountain Lives, and it's...
Hang on, I'm just writing it down. Okay?
And it's by Rex Campbell.
Great. I'll try and get hold of that.
Well worth it.
Now, the really important things are gifts.
Oh, don't worry about that. Just bring yourself.
I know, but I'd like to get something for your parents. What about Janice? I know she loves English tea.
Oh, that's very kind, but she's not drinking so much of that these days. But she'd love some chocolate. You know her favorite.
Oh, yes, that'd be nice. I'll do that. And Alec, is he still into racing?
Oh, very much so.
I was thinking of bringing a calendar, you know, with horse racing pictures.
What a good idea. He'd love that.
Great. So that's about it, I think.
Yes, I think so. So you'll send me your number again?
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear the curator of an art museum talking to a group of visitors who are visiting the museum for the first time. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
A very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad you've chosen to visit the prestigious Triton Museum of Art today, and I'll look forward to showing you around. But first I would just like you to refer to the maps of the museum that you picked up on your way in. Now, where you picked up your maps is just to the left, as you enter the building outside the museum store. By the way, the store is a great place to pick up some souvenirs before you leave. Oh, and if anyone wants to leave a coat in the cloakroom, then please feel free to do so at no extra charge. It's just over there on the other side of the entrance to the museum store. Okay, so this nice spacious area we're now standing in is the Rotunda. It contains some of the museum's most striking sculptures. From here, you gain access to all the museum. Leading off from the Rotunda are the Warburton Gallery and our other large gallery that houses a permanent art collection. We'll be starting our tour actually in the Permanent Collection Gallery, as it's the nearest of the two galleries to the entrance. We'll make our way afterwards to the other gallery I mentioned, as it's right next door. Oh, the smaller room behind the Warburton Gallery that you see on your maps is just a storage space for the museum, and access is blocked off to the public by a railing across the entrance to that area. So now, where were we? Ah, yes. After we visited those galleries, which will take us a good hour as there are so many interesting exhibits to see, we'll make our way back across the rotunda and visit the Cowl Room. It's right at the far end of the museum, on the opposite side of the rotunda to the Warburton and Permanent Collection galleries. It's one of the museum highlights and contains some high-quality contemporary art exhibits. Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to point out the ladies' and gents' toilets earlier. They're just before you get to the Cowl Room and are adjacent to the museum's store. Don't go into the room opposite the toilets. That's our staff room area and kitchen. Right, so that's all you need to know for the moment. Let's begin the tour.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Well, I hope you all found the tour interesting. If any of you would like to become a patron of the museum, you can request information from the museum store. Being a patron entitles you to special discounts on visiting exhibitions and first refusal on tickets to special events. You will also be the first to know about our museum events, as you are automatically placed on the museum's mailing list. You can choose to become a gold, silver or bronze patron of the museum. Gold patrons are also permitted free entry for one accompanying guest. However, all patrons can receive year-round benefits that are not enjoyed by non-patrons. Having said all that, I would now like to announce some very special news. Next year will be our centenary celebrations. It's hard to believe it, but the museum was founded over 100 years ago. Accordingly, we will be seeing in the new year in style with a special masked ball. This has been organised in response to a special request from some of our patrons. Plans have yet to be finalised for this one-off event, but a themed masked ball has been suggested. The idea being that guests come in the guise of famous artists, past or present. One exciting event that has been confirmed is the Summer Garden Party. We are anticipating a lot of interest for this one, so it's best to book well in advance. Whilst the tickets are by no means cheap, we like to think that the price reflects the quality of the event. Amongst the many treats we have in store for you is a live orchestra playing in the museum's gardens, which are to the back of the main building. It is weather permitting, of course. Again, we are dependent on good weather in order for the barbecue to take place. Alternatively, a sit-down meal will be provided in the Cowl Room. Everything from the entertainment to the food is included in the ticket price, so there are no hidden extras. Now, having given you a roundup of the highlights of next year's social events, let's go on to the artistic highlights of next month. Coming up shortly is Ewan Bailey's newest installation, Light and Sound Waves. Always thought-provoking, his previous installations have been very well received. We will also have Hamish Barnes here for the first time as artist in residence. He will be encouraging visitors to adopt a more hands-on approach to art. Finally, last but not least, we will be exhibiting the work of Sean Long, who will be making his artistic debut. His work will be on show in the Warburton Gallery over the summer period. We are anticipating a large attendance at his exhibition. Well, that's all from me. I look forward to seeing you at one or maybe all of our events. It's certainly going to be an action-packed year for the museum, both culturally and socially.
That's the end of section 2. You have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear 2 business studies students discussing a presentation they'll do on an article on working effectively in groups. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
So, Brad, what did you think of the article on group work?
Oh, hi, Helen. Yeah, it was pretty good, with helpful pieces of advice on how to make group work effective.
I think we were lucky to be given such a straightforward text to present at the Management Skills Seminar.
Yeah. Actually, shall we discuss it now? Have you got time?
Sure. It's only a 10-minute presentation, so we just need to explain and then give our views on the main points raised in the article.
I'll jot down some notes. Right.
So, there are 3 main sections. I suggest we start with listening.
Yeah, effective listening in groups, because it's not something that's frequently covered on courses in our field.
No, and we should say that in the presentation.
Yeah. And also effective listening's pretty simple, you know. I don't think it's hard to learn.
Well, people think it's easy, but in my experience, most of us tend to be very lazy listeners.
Okay, I wouldn't argue with that.
Something I do think we should emphasize is the power of the listener's posture, gestures, etc., in making speakers feel respected.
Not that you're just waiting for them to finish before jumping in with your own ideas.
Uh-huh.
Okay, right. The next section is on goal setting. Let's make sure we're clear what the article says on this.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it says that all group members must be given time to explain their own goals.
That's it, yeah.
And then, did it say that the whole group should agree on common goals?
That's a bit too strong. It's more that everyone's agendas should be equally acceptable. But it does say that goals have to be realistic, you know.
Achievable within a particular time?
You've got it. That's really what the article's saying. There isn't really any point in having ideals if group members know they won't come to anything within a reasonable period. So, I think a summary covering those points will be enough for that part of the presentation, don't you?
Yep. Now, the last section is about conflict resolution.
Actually, I thought it was the worst part of the article.
Me too.
I don't think it went into sufficient detail on the issue.
Actually, I thought it devoted too much space to it, but that it was all rather boring, you know?
It didn't mention some of the more radical theories.
Absolutely. I found that really irritating.
Right, and also I think it could have said more about conflict sometimes being healthy in groups.
Absolutely. It just mentioned rather glibly about how we should avoid thinking of winners and losers, and that quick resolution of conflict is always desirable.
Without explaining what these terms mean?
Well, it gives quite detailed definitions, but doesn't develop a proper argument.
Right. So, for the presentation, I think we just give some definitions and
then explain what we felt were the weaknesses in the article's treatment of conflict resolution.
Yeah, good.
Now you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
So, let's think about what we have to prepare for the actual presentation.
Well, I suppose we'll use PowerPoint, but I'm hopeless at using it, especially if it has any visuals. I really have to look into doing a course on it because I know I'll need it in the future.
Don't worry, I'm quite happy using PowerPoint, and I'll put it together when everything else is ready.
That's a relief. But yes, do that later.
Okay. Now, I heard the tutor saying we have to include some well-chosen quotations from the article.
I'm not sure if we do. I'll email him to find out.
No need. I can just have a look at the specs he gave us when he set the task.
That'll be quicker.
But the tutor definitely said we have to prepare a handout to go with the talk. I'm not really sure how we do that.
Sarah did one last year.
Who's she?
She's doing the same option as me on marketing. I'll ask her advice on what to include.
Great. So that just leaves the bibliography at the end. I suppose it'll mainly be articles.
Yeah. So we'll just look on the web, and we can leave that till later.
But we've been advised against that.
Well, we could have a look through some journals in the library.
I think we should start by looking through module handbooks. I think that'll give us some good leads.
Yeah, you're probably right. So that's all the topics.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of an art lecture. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I have just shown you all some slides of a very varied set of paintings. I noticed, as I was showing the slides, a few giggles in the audience and a few looks of dismay. I guess entitling my lecture Unconventional Art Geniuses was a bit misleading. When most of you were looking at the frankly basic colour use and rather primitive painting techniques, you probably were more than a little surprised. Well, I have a shock for you all. What I'm about to tell you next will help you understand the title of my lecture. All the slides I showed you previously are of artworks made by, wait for it, animals. Yes, I heard a few gasps in the audience when I said that. Whilst the artwork would be definitely primitive by human standards, when you consider that the artworks were executed by animals, then, well, they are frankly staggering. Nor were the artworks purely the work of our closest relatives, the apes. No, they were produced by animal artists drawn from a diverse pool of species, ranging from elephants to gorillas, birds and even sloths. In fact, in recognition of this, last year, London's Grant Museum of Zoology staged what organisers thought was the first interspecies show of paintings by animals. In the show, art was shown from an orangutan, a gorilla and an elephant. Whilst the gorilla and the orangutan produced works that bore a resemblance to the paintings of modern artists de Kooning and Klein, the elephant's work took a more figurative approach in the rendering of a flower pot. Now, before you all go thinking this is a revolutionary discovery, I would like to put the record straight. The contribution animals can make to the art world was highlighted as far back as the 1950s. In this decade, Desmond Morris, celebrated social anthropologist and author of bestsellers such as Body Watching and The Naked Ape, introduced Congo, the painting chimp, to the British public in a TV appearance. Back then, animal art makers were regarded as little more than a novelty. Today, however, animal artists are not viewed so much as novelties, but as sophisticated creators with skills and senses that they use to execute artworks in ways humans never can. As a result of animals being taken more seriously as creators of art, it has become commonplace today for zoos to provide materials to captive animals. The hope is that by giving animals the means to create art, they will be kept physically and mentally stimulated. Obviously, you can't give a lizard a paintbrush and expect it to draw. What the zookeepers do, though, is to give animals species-appropriate art materials and tools. For example, sloth bears, who feed by blowing away dirt from the forest floor to feed on termites, have been given a straw-like apparatus to blow paint onto a canvas. What is one of the most interesting discoveries to come out of all this, though, is the finding that animals voluntarily and instinctively participate in the creation of art. It seems, therefore, that animals derive as much pleasure as humans do in applying paint to canvas or making a clay or plasticine figure. The obvious conclusion to draw from all this is that there are more similarities between man and other animals than some of us might care to admit. However, just to satisfy the sceptics amongst you, there is something I would like to add. So far, the primate and elephant art that has been produced often bears an uncanny resemblance to Western art. Certain conventions are evident in the animal's art that suggests a degree of human intervention. As proof of this, an elephant named Boon Me was actually guided by a keeper who steered the animal's trunk to paint brushstrokes on a canvas. Nevertheless, we should keep an open mind about animal art, as there are just as many examples of artworks that have been completed by animals without human aid.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.